For what it's worth, I think he checked his swing.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast where we talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan, and where's my lower third? Where's that? You can call me Sully. I am an Emmy-nominated television producer who has been a baseball podcaster for the last decade or so, and this is my fifth full season here on the Locked On Podcast Network. You can follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever it's called now, and on Instagram. I am your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Thanks so much for making us your first listen, as we're available wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to follow us and like us on YouTube. And you can please subscribe. We are trying to get this to 1 billion subscribers by the end of the month. We're several hundred million short of that. Hey, lots to cover today, especially because the division series is all wrapped up, which means we're going to have a few days without baseball in the middle of October. Easily avoidable, that situation. And we're going to talk a little bit about the Phillies and the end of the Braves. I think we're done with all the 100-win teams. Yep, it's the time for the League Championship Series, which is not a time to be a 100-win team. Look, win the games. That's one way to get it. That's one way to fix this. But I am having a few thoughts. But first and foremost, let's talk about our trivia question. We got a bunch of people guessing on the trivia question, which was, who is the only person to be the clinching pitcher for a League Championship Series in both the American League and the National League? We got some really good guesses, including Dennis Eckersley was a good guess. Pedro Martinez, who actually never clinched a League Championship Series. He clinched a division series, but never a League Championship Series. There was one or two. There was another good one who started. I can't quite remember. Oddly, Joe Borowski clinched both a American League and National League division series, never a League Championship Series. The answer is, drumroll please, and someone got it. Who got it correct? Court Stell got it correct. Big surprise there. And there was someone else got it right. Well, I'll look that up later. It was Rich Gossage. The Goose clinched the 1978 American League Championship Series as a member of the Yankees. He's also clinched the 1981 ALCS when the Yankees swept the Oakland A's. And then later, as a member of the San Diego Padres, he clinched one of the most shocking comebacks in playoff history when the Padres came back against the Cubs. He clinched that at Jack Murphy Stadium. So that the answer to that is Rich Gossage. I mentioned before, started the show off, I think Grissom checked his swing. I would have called that a check swing. We would have had Ronald Acuna Jr. coming up with the bases loaded and a chance of high drama, and Matt Strahm with his Joe Dirt haircut on the mound. We didn't get that. We didn't get a lot of things. We didn't get a single. We're now 2 rounds into this playoff. Okay. All of the wild card series were sweeps, and we didn't get a game 5 in any of the division series. Now, there have been a few good games. In fact, I think this series between Philadelphia and Atlanta had 2 good games. I think game 2 was a classic, and I thought tonight's game was a good game. I think it was a great game, but I thought it was a good game. There were definitely some thrills, and the catch in center field with Acuna hitting that ball to the gap, which if he doesn't make that catch, it clears the bases, and maybe we're having a game on Saturday. but we're not. We're not having a game on Friday, not having a game on Saturday. But we haven't had that real white knuckle moment. Oh my God, this series can bounce either way yet. And this isn't just me, hearkening back to the glory of mine. I remember '86. I think you look at some of the years like 2012, where all of the division series went the distance, and we've seen some great, great playoff matchups over the last bunch of years. And last year, the series between the Yankees and the Cleveland Guardians was a real thrilling, nail biting series. We've seen some tremendous series over the years. The Giants Dodgers series a couple of years ago. Granted, it ended with a check swing, which was crap. Can we all admit it was crap? I mean, the guy Scherzer was probably eventually going to strike the guy out anyway. But come on, that was crap. But that series was tremendous. The Red Sox Rays series was filled with a lot of thrills. We've had some really thrilling series. And so far, I mean, again, I think we've had one legitimately great game. And that was game 2, Atlanta versus Philadelphia. That was an absolute thriller. Jump up. I can't believe what I saw, thriller. We've had a couple of decent games, but you know, it a lot of things can be redeemed with an ending. The 1986 World Series, of course, one close to my heart and punched me in my gut, uh, was kind of a dud World Series. Game 1 was 1-0. Game 2 was 4-2. But so the other games were kind of lopsided and blowouts. And it has the great reputation because of the great Game 6. The 97 World Series between Cleveland and the Marlins was just weird. Snow falling, big blowout, weird football looking scores. But Game 7 was one of the greatest games of all time. The Cleveland Chicago World Series of 2016 has a reputation of being an all time great because Game 7 was a classic that I hope Ken Burns has in the next version. But the series leading up to there were like 4 blowout games, maybe 5. It was really not a very good series until Game 5 was a good game, and Game 7 was a classic. So the playoffs can be redeemed. It's just they better pick it up. We better start seeing some Game 7s. All right, and we're also seeing that the regular season and winning 100 games. I mean, it's nice, but it didn't help. This year, it didn't help the Orioles, didn't help the Dodgers, didn't help the Braves. Last year, it didn't help the Mets, didn't help the Braves, didn't help the Dodgers. Some familiar names are popping up every year. But at some point, I think you'd need to look at. I have some thoughts of how to change things and what they should do. But one of the things they have to do is tighten up the schedule. There are too many off days. There are too many travel days. It means that you're hiccuping like crazy. There's no momentum to any of these series because of the off days. And so, we're not going to have a game on Friday. We're not going to have a game on Saturday. We got a Friday and Saturday in a mid-October weekend. We will not have games. I think that's crazy. I think that's crazy. But I digress. Ronald Acuna came up small, big time. Yet another superstar who had a miserable postseason this year. But do you know what? Let's give credit where credit is due. And I'm going to do an episode a little bit later this week about the fact that teams should just call up Dave Dombrowski and say, spend my money, because he spends it wisely. Think of all the acquisitions that Philadelphia made who came through big time. Castellanos, big time. Trea Turner, big time. Schwarber, Harper. Look at all these pickups they make. And they worked out. And now the Phillies, who were a good team. It's not like this is a lousy team. The Phillies were a very good team this year. And all due respect to Miller and his beloved Diamondbacks, the Phillies have to be favored here. I'm going to be rooting like crazy for the Diamondbacks in the first bunch of games because I want every series to go Game 7 because I don't really have a dog in this fight. But that being said, the Phillies could pitch. Nola's a very good pitcher. Obviously, Wheeler is a legit ace. Suarez, we saw what he could do. And I'm going to give Thompson, the manager of the Philadelphia Phillies, who I didn't know what to make of. And by the way, I have no idea what all this must feel like to Joe Girardi, who got fired last year when the Phillies were the definition of mediocre. And now here they are. They're probably going to go to back-to-back World Series. Um, but I really, really admired how Thompson managed the bullpen today. He did not adhere to what I call the tyranny of the save, which is you automatically have your best pitcher, your best closer, whatever, pitching the ninth inning, because sometimes that threat happens earlier in the game. And so you bring in your best pitcher for the situation. Now, I think some of the pitchers, and I'm looking at you, Rocco Baldelli, in the loss to Houston the other day, I think some of these managers are pulling the pitchers too early, doing the whole, well, they faced them twice. Now we'll bring in our parade of relievers. And I'm thinking, yeah, but what if it goes to extra innings? And suddenly you've used your best relievers in the fifth or sixth inning when you could have pushed your starter maybe an extra inning or two. But Suarez, who pitched quite well over the 5 innings, then Dominguez and Alvarado and Kimbrel and Soto all did their job. They combined to let up 1 hit and 4 walks, and they got the great play in center field. And they went to some of their pitchers like Alvarado and Kimbrel in those earlier rallies to shut them down. Now, that meant that Strom had to be the one to come out and clinch the playoffs, okay? Which I don't think he woke up this morning thinking he was going to be the pitcher on the mound to clinch the series. But give everybody credit. The pitchers did the job. Thompson didn't care who got the save. He used who was the best person for each of those situations. And then say, well, I can't use Alvarado or Kimbrel until the 8th or 9th. I'm looking at you, Matt Williams, in 2014, who let his, or Kimbrel being left to rot in the bullpen famously during the 2013 playoffs, and the Dodgers rallied and the Braves went home. Use your best pitchers to get out of the rallies, because we all know the Braves are a explosive offensive team that were being kept quiet for the first bunch of games, except for that little burst of energy they had in game 2. And so by using the bullpen the way they did, without worrying about who got the save, look what happened. Phillies are in. And they're going to have a rested and ready Nola and Wheeler to go 1 and 2. I don't know if they're going to start Wheeler 1, Nola 2. I think that I would start Wheeler, but I'm not the manager. And you're going to have Wheeler, Nola versus Gallen and Merrill Kelly. And so you're going to have 2 really good pitching matchups in games 1 and 2 in Philadelphia. So look, at the Braves had a remarkable season. And I really, really, and did I mention really, thought they were going to go to the World Series. And if that ball hit the wall that Acuna hit to center field, if that ball was, if the center fielder, Ross, didn't catch the ball, or if it was like 2 feet higher and it cleared the bases, chances are we have a game on Saturday, a winner-take-all game on Saturday. And I think that's the definition of a coin toss. But right now, the Braves are, like all other 100-win teams, are going home. And we're going to see some intriguing matchups heading up to the League Championship Series, which starts, I think, in a week and a half. But right now, let's talk about our friends at Sleeper. The Major League Baseball playoffs are in full swing. We got the League Championship Series. We know that you're going to have either the Astros or the Rangers in the World Series against the Phillies or the Diamondbacks. How weird is that? But you got great stars like the aforementioned Merrill Kelly, like Bryce Harper, like Trea Turner, like Altuve and Jeremy Pena and Alvarez and Justin Verlander, all these great players. And you can pick more or less stats for stars like these by using our good friends at Sleeper. Pick more or less stats on them, like home runs, hits, strikeouts, for a 100 times payout on Sleeper. And get your picks right, and you can win big. So you can make the entries in under a minute, and guess what you do? You just make taps on your phone, and it can pay out. Use promo code LOCKEDON, and you'll get a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Sleeper! It's time to win big. Look at I swear I won't harp on this too much, but the fact of the matter is we need to have the momentum in a postseason. It's critical. It's absolutely critical. That's one of the things that when you see, look at in the 1972 book that I'm working now about the 1972 postseason. When you think about some of the great years, we've had lots of different postseason series. I mentioned 2012. 2012 had the greatest 4 rounds of the division series I've ever seen in my life. In '04, we remember what happened with the Red Sox and the Yankees, but at the same time, the Astros and the Cardinals played a really underrated series. And it was like so thrilling. This happened on this day, this happened that day, back and forth and back and forth. It becomes thrilling that you would have multiple games happening. And the minute the game ends, we got another one tomorrow. And if you stretch that out too much in baseball, look at whether or not it's affecting 100-win teams with a long layoff is something to discuss. That layoff should never have lasted more than 3 days. I've said this before. If you're going to play in the wild card series, if we're going to try to reward the the teams for winning the division, that means you have to start the wild card series the day after the season ends. Especially since we're not doing tiebreakers anymore. So if you have to push something back a day or something, it'd be no different if it was a rainout. So season ends on a Sunday. That Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, it's all in one place. There's no reason to have a rest time between the games. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, you start. That's when you play the wild card series. Thursday, you start the division series. So if you're a team and you play on Sunday, you get Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday off, rest up some of the players, everything. You don't get a whole week off. And then you start the division series. One of them starts on a Thursday, one of them starts on a Friday. I understand staggering them a little bit. So by the time the next weekend starts, the weekend we're about to go into, game 1 of the league championship series is Friday. You have Friday and Saturday and Sunday. You stagger them, fine. And I know you're trying to avoid the NFL, so you play a game on Sunday night. I understand it's harder to schedule and book some of these things than you'd think. It's not always about it's not always as simple as I just play it then. But we've seen situations where you don't know where a team is going here or there. Like if both of the league championship series, not league, both of the division series went the distance, and we got to that game 5, and you would not know whether or not the next game was going to be played in Philadelphia, Atlanta, or in Los Angeles. So you would have to have hotels and everything ready to go this way or the other. I remember in 2006 when the A's were the underdog, but they wound up beating and sweeping the Minnesota Twins. And then the Yankees wound up being upset by the Detroit Tigers. At the end of those series, we didn't know, wait, is the series going to start in Oakland, New York, or Minnesota? I assume you have hotel reservations everywhere. So get on that. This will help the entertainment and help the momentum behind some of these games. That's the thing I love the most about the baseball playoffs is you could win the biggest, most thrilling game in baseball history. Dust yourself off because there's another game tomorrow. The Red Sox had a horrific collapse in Game 4 of the 1986 American League Championship Series. And less than 12 hours later, they were playing again, and they wound up having one of the greatest comebacks they've ever had. And we saw that a little bit last year in the World Series, where the first Game 3, where the Phillies just jumped all over, had a great offensive display against the Astros. The very next day, the Astros threw a combined no-hitter. It's one right after another. And if we're expanding the playoffs, then you've got to have it even be tighter. Not spread out more. I want these games to be one on top of the other, not just because I'm a fan. I'm also doing a podcast here. I'm trying to do a freaking podcast. It's tough to do a daily podcast when we don't have daily games. And so, look at we're gonna. It's just I want to have that tiny bit of a rant. I'm going to talk about in the next segment LA and a little preview of an upcoming episode. But yeah, look at let's move it up. This isn't just me being a grumpy old man, which I very well may be. And in fact, when a listener had another way to describe me on Twitter, a guy named Jay Cottrell says this dude is a no talent hack. I'm not arguing. I'm just saying them. I'm just glad that some people are listening. But let's go. Let's have this be a daily event. This is starting to feel like football right now. I can't believe we're going to have to fill a couple of days here without any games. There's no reason for that. There's no reason for that. All right, it's right now time. Sorry about the little glitch there. It's time to talk to our friends at FanDuel. October baseball is here, and you can make your postseason debut with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Join FanDuel today. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed, when you place your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to create your new account. Then you can get in on the action from the first pitch until the final out. Bet on everything from strikeouts to home runs to who will win the game. And if you don't want to wait for the whole game to get a W, predict what will happen at the next at bat with quick bets. So head on over to FanDuel.com/lockedon right now. Step up to the plate this postseason with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Upcoming episode I'm going to be doing, I've got a lot of notices from Orioles fans. I think some of them were mad at me. Some thought I was picking on them or something. I don't dislike the Orioles. I would love to see the Orioles win the World Series. I would love to have seen this year's Orioles win the World Series, but I have a lot of thoughts about, and I'm going to go through some of the best responses and some of the best debates that I've had. I think Jay Cottrell, who had those bad things to say about me, I'm sorry, Jay, try my hardest. Um, a lot of it came from some Orioles fans, of which I'm like, look, I get it. Your team got eliminated. One of the best chances, one of the few chances since Ronald Reagan was president that you could actually honestly say, I think the Orioles have a shot to go to the World Series this year. And to fall so badly on their face was kind of shocking. And so I get it. And so I'm going to print out the best ones. This is either going to be a Friday or a Saturday bonus episode. And I'm going to print out the best ones. I'm going to go through it. I was thinking about this the other day. The Dodgers. Now, I am not a Dodger fan, but I wanted the Dodgers to go to the World Series. Why? Because I live in Pasadena and the Dodgers play right down the street. And also, I work in Pasadena. So that means baseball tends to be local. And so it's very hard to talk to people and get them excited about a baseball game when it's between Arizona and Philadelphia and I'm in Pasadena. Now, I get excited. I don't care who's playing in the League Championship Series or World Series, but I'm a bit of a unicorn fan. In fact, I would root for a team called the Unicorns. So when I saw the Dodgers get swept, I'm like, oh, great. There goes my casual talking about, the Dodgers in the playoffs with my fellow coworkers. I do have my student D who is going to follow the games no matter what, but even he was sad. He said, "Oh, Mr. Sullivan, the Dodgers lost." I said, "I know, buddy, I know." And I also wanted to go use my app to buy Dodger tickets to the World Series. I guess I'm not going to be doing that this year. But I was thinking about this. I got a conversation with someone, and I had to think: was this the worst playoff showing ever by a team that had a chance to win. And it really might be. This might be the worst showing in baseball history for a team that had a legitimate shot. Now, there have been instances where teams been swept and they were intense underdogs. The 2005 Padres finished 82 and 80 and got absolutely whumped by St. Louis in the playoffs. But do you know what? The Cardinals were a 100-win team, and the Padres were an 82-win team, and they weren't expected to do anything. So while I could point to that team, that Bruce Bochy managed team, I could also say, yeah, but they weren't expected to do anything. There have been instances where teams have just had the doors blown off in the World Series. The 89 Giants, of course, there was a big earthquake in the middle of that series, which allowed the A's to pitch Dave Stewart twice and Mike Moore twice. They didn't lead a single inning in that postseason, but the A's were favored. The Red Sox had in the 2004 World Series, everyone remembers they beat the Yankees. The World Series was against St. Louis, and the Red Sox just manhandled the St. Louis Cardinals, who were 100 some odd win teams with Hall of Famers. Pujols is going to be a Hall of Famer. Roland was on the team. Larry Walker was on the team. It was just stacked. And that Cardinal team didn't lead for a single inning of that World Series. But at least they got to the World Series and they won a super dramatic Game 7 playoff against a very, very good and very, very talented Houston Astros team. There was I was going back through history and the 1928 World Series, the St. Louis Cardinals, who just 2 years prior beat the Yankees in one of the most dramatic World Series at that point. In 28, the Yankees absolutely whumped them. It was a 4-game sweep. 4-1 was the first game, 9-3, 7-3, 7-3. Not a very competitive series, and both teams, had Hall of Famers. I mean, the Cardinals had Grover Cleveland Alexander, Frankie Fritz, Jim Bottomley, Chuck Hafey, Jesse Haynes, my grandmother's favorite player, Rabbit Marinville. But that team went up against the Yankees of Ruth, Gehrig, Tony Lazzari, Herb Pennock, managed by Miller Huggins. I mean, that was a 100-win Yankee team. So I can't throw them under that proverbial bus. This was a 100-win Dodger team facing a Diamondback team that barely was, what 84, 85 wins, whatever it was. There was 16 games between them in the regular season. And and the other thing was it was not just a sweep, but obviously game 1 was out of hand early. They were down, 6 runs before they even came to bat. They were down 3 runs before they came to bat in game 2, and they let up 4 home runs in 1 inning. We're down 4-0 in game 3. In other words, in each one of the games, the Diamondbacks ran out to a big lead, or at least a comfortable lead, and held on. The last 2 games were 4-2, 4-2, so they looked close. But in both those games, the Dodgers just looked out of sorts. And the game 1 was a blowout, of course. And the other 2 games were like, yeah, we're down early. We got to climb back. And it's tough to climb back when your Hall of Fame starter recorded 1 out. When your 2 MVP candidates combined for 1 hit, 3 walks, and 2 runs scored total in 3 games. So I'm really hard pressed to think of a team that had a legitimate shot at a pennant, a legitimate shot of getting to the World Series, that did worse than this year's Dodger team. As I said, there have been teams that have been, the top ranked teams have been swept. But I think of some, I mean, I mean, Like you had the Angels in 2014, but they lost 2 extra inning games. Like they showed up. The Rangers in 2016, they showed up. They lost an extra inning game in the clincher. The White Sox had the best record in the American League in 2000, and they got swept in the division series, but at least they one of them was an extra inning game, and they won the Mariners won on a walk off, and so I'm really really hard pressed to think of a team that was this talented. And yes, I know they had injuries. Every team has injuries, and this everything was aligned for this squad. I mean, the only other one that I came up with was in 2001. In 2001, the Atlanta Braves and the Houston Astros locked antlers, and it was the Astros had the best record in the National League, and the Braves jumped up to an early 7-4 win in Game One. They won 1-0 on a Glavine start in Game Two, and then they blew them out. It was not a blowout, but it was pretty comfortable 6-2 win. So that was a top ranked team that got swept, and it was really pretty. Uh, it was a not a very competitive series. But even then, they lost to the Braves, who had a bit of a down year in the regular season, but they were still filled with Glavine, Maddox, Smoltz, Chipper Jones, Javier Lopez. All these superstars were on the team. This Diamondbacks team, they have very good players. Corbin Carroll, Zach Gallen, I mentioned a bunch of them already. Ketel Marte obviously had a wonderful series. But to face a 100-win team and just make them look like, well, I'll say it, the 2005 Padres, I think it's stunning. If you could think of a team that had that much behind them, who came up that small in the postseason, and partly because of their stars coming up small, let me know in the comments. And also, let me throw a trivia question for you here. Philadelphia Phillies did not win a league championship series until 1980, which was only their third pennant in their history. They had won the 1915 pennant in 1915 and 1950. They had not won the World Series. They won the World Series in 1980, and they won arguably the greatest league championship series of all time against the Houston Astros in 1980. Which Phillies infielder was the league championship series MVP for that series against the Houston Astros, one of the greatest postseason series ever in the history of baseball, and put the Phillies in the World Series for only the third time in their history and leading them to their first ever title? An infielder on the Phillies won the MVP. Who was it? Who was that infielder? So send me the answers either here on YouTube or at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and Instagram, or at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Talking about the Braves exit, the Phillies entrance, the fact that these games got to come one on top of another, and the Dodgers letting their fans down like no one else. This No Talent Hack is Paul Francis Sullivan. I am your host of Locked On MLB. Please, please, please call me Sully.